So I've never done a bookshelf tour before, but I was tagged in, I don't know if I'm supposed to use a proper name or a channel name, but it's that man from SETI Alpha 4. He tagged me in basically going through his book collection, so I thought I would return the favour and go through mine. At the top, you'll see I have some of my paintings. A lot of those are Riley, the narrator of my books. And then when you get into the actual books, they're in alphabetical order, which is why you find Scott Alexander's The Dracula Illusion not quite first, but right at the beginning there. Some of these books I have reviewed on the channel, some haven't. That's Space Precinct is a little bit of a guilty pleasure. Lee Brackett, I love Lee Brackett. Elizabeth Braddon, I read that for university. It's a great book. Lady Audley's Secret. And this is just like a Tarzan of the Apes, but it's just like a really nice sort of classic throwback cover. I really enjoy the cover. You see there, that's a more modern-ish, probably from the 70s or early 80s of Martian Chronicles, Bassoon Chronicles rather. And the old librarian trick, yes, I have worked as a librarian, of leaving space for when you get new books to fit in those layers. Tripod collection there, look, that's quite a nice collection of books. Was a trilogy, expanded to 4. There's my Lee Child. Now the Lee Child books are suffered through one of the phases that I've been through in my life, which is I used to buy a book, read the book, and then get rid of the book. And that would mean like giving it away to somebody else that I knew, who I worked with, that used to read those Lee Child, so I just used to read them and give them to him. Sort of, I've gone through many phases of getting rid of my books after I've read them, and then other phases where I've collected the books. I'm currently now in I've got enough books. Team Yankee is one that I hang on to because sometimes I'm in a school working and the kids will say, you know, what's a good book? What do you recommend? I always recommend Team Yankee to the boys because it's World War III, so it's like something to think about, but it's also a little bit more modern than the World War II books, and there's plenty of action in it, so it's never a boring book. It's a good one to recommend for teenage boys. My book, obviously I'm going to recommend that, and without any bias at all, 50 Shades was the first book that I reviewed anywhere, and you can find that review on my channel if you're prepared to scroll a long way back. Yeah, Sarah J. Maas. There's the Alistair MacLeans. If you were looking for Desmond Bagley's under B, you won't find them there because I keep my Bagleys separate. So I used to read these Lindsay Davis ones. Again, I used to read them and then give them to my mum, and the only one that I've kept is the first one. That's that one, The Silver Pigs. These Han Solo books are the best Star Wars tie-ins that I've read, and I've read quite a lot. This one, also The Lost Legacy, is the first book that I ever bought with my own earned money. These Terry Pratchett books are bagged in plastic because they're signed. The first two Red Dwarf books by Grant and Naylor, they wrote books separately after that point, but I really like both of those, so I highly recommend them. And another book I'm going to recommend, especially to that man, SETI Alpha 4, if the camera will actually focus, are the John Steakley books, particularly this one, which was made into a movie with I can't remember his name, James Woods, but the movie, they bought the title and very little else have they used. The book's very different and much, much better. So there you go. I keep my David Gemmell separately, and beneath them you'll see that I keep my Robert Heinlein separately, but again, I threw so many out over the year, or gave them away over the years, that there's just a fraction of them remaining, really. Ones that I've either bought again since, or like the handful I kept as being the best by those two. So on the lower shelf you can find all of my hardback books. There's not very many, and you can see there's a few Desmond Bagleys. That's because I was going through a phase of buying, if I saw a Desmond Bagley in hardback, I would buy it to get the set in hardback and in paperback, but I haven't got very far. They're pretty rare. This is some of the non-fiction I read for my dissertation. You see a lot of it is on Robert Heinlein or science fiction of that era. The Alexei Panshin book there was key to my dissertation, really. Damon Knight and James Blish books are pretty useful as well. My Judge Dredd collection, not all Judge Dredd. You'll see at the end there's a couple of 2000 ADs from the early 80s as well. There's Rogue Trooper, the first book, which wasn't as good as I remembered, but the Nemesis the Warlock, I bought the whole trilogy, and that's really not as good as I remembered it being. The artwork is amazing, but the stories are pretty poor. This single is actually a vinyl single, and it's by the Fink brothers, who's actually, one of them was Suggs from Madness. Not his finest hour musically. I got these ones because they had either a prequel or a sequel to the movie in them when that came out, so that must be got to be 2012. But that's not my entire Judge Dredd collection, nor is it my entire 2000 AD collection. Oh no, there's more to the side. But the best comic book ever written is this one. It's Halo Jones, The Ballad of, art by Ian Gibson, who's not necessarily one of my favourites. Probably if I'm going to go for 2000 AD, I would choose Brian Bolland, perhaps, or maybe from a slightly more modern era, David Roach. The Music Killer is one of my all-time favourites. The psychopath decides he's going to kill off all the plastic music of the era, released around the time of Stock Aitken and Woman's heyday. But in this book, you'll find, actually, I've got Ian Gibson's art alongside David Roach's. So that's Ian Gibson. Not bad, just not one of my favourites. A little bit too cartoony. He works well for Halo, but not so well for Judge Dredd. And there's David Roach. Sort of, you can really see the Brian Bolland influence on that, I think. I really like it. David Roach, not used enough in 2000 AD, particularly these days when, sadly, the art in 2000 AD, they seem to favour being weird and unusual. So here you can see the 2000 AD, the complete Judge Andersons, as well as all the ones I bought individually when they first came out. So I got loads of those too. Here we've got basically more comic book stuff. I got most of it is Calvin and Hobbes, which is my favourite. I've got these bigger ones, these treasuries, where there's like really oversized printing. There you go. And I've also got the old ones, the original sort of publications, which are a lot smaller. Next to that, you see I've got a few books on drawing, particularly like manga and sort of a more cartoony style. I'm not much of an artist. And to the left, you see I've got sheet music, but most of that's from Japan, because in Japan you can buy a thing called a band score. And if we have a look at this one, I'll show you what that is. It lets you have all of the instruments that are playing in the song at the same time. So it will show you at the same time what they're playing. So you've got the vocals, you've got the electric guitars, bass guitars, and what the drummer is doing. So if you were like in a cover band or something, that would be incredibly useful. Those books come from Japan, and sometimes they're very expensive. So alongside that bookcase, I have like a cupboard, perhaps you want to call it a dresser, with a few books on here as well. So there's my Bagleys, and they are in order, the order of publication. Up here we have all of the test prints and the early sort of concept art prints, just trying to find a printer that would work. So that's why they've all got these sort of different covers that were all done by me. Now you're getting into the ones that have the actual cover, and these four are the Amazon author proofs of the new books. Note the title change. Ooh, you took a dive, ref. Nothing to do with me. Now we're at the back of the room, and I haven't moved the lights down this end because these books are just some of my non-fiction. This one is my dissertation from university. Down below, reference books, apart from that Blackadder one, obviously, and my H.P. Lovecraft collection on the end. Down below, another level, more reference books, more non-fiction, and at the bottom there's my Duran Duran biographies. Only 2 of the 5 have printed one so far, and books from uni and other reference books as well. One more shelf in this room, which means one more painting of Riley. Then these are collections of short stories, Elmore Leonard westerns I'm really quite enjoying. Just pick one up and read one when I feel like it. Yeah, just short stories. I just dip in and out of that shelf. And below there is my Shakespeare collection. All stuff that I use for school or just occasionally read for fun. Yes, I'm that strange. I actually do read Shakespeare for fun. And on the end I've got like an illustrated copy of the Odyssey. It's actually a really nice copy, and if the light down here was better I would show you inside it. So let's go on to the back room. My spare room, which means more paintings, more junk. And these 3 shelves were my TBR, and they were all full. But I've moved some non-fiction in here, and I've moved some of the books that I have read in here, but yeah, some of this is just non-fiction. There you go, the bottom shelf. So my TBR was 3 entire shelves and jam-packed, but I took about half a dozen plastic bagfuls of books to a local book fair and got rid of them. They just were taking up too much room, and it got to the point where I couldn't even decide. You just sit in front of the bookshelf looking, what do I want to read next? And just sit there looking for 20 minutes because there was just so many on there. So I had to go, for my sanity as much as anything. Thanks for watching. A bookshelf tour probably was quite boring. Sorry about that. See you in the next video. Bye.